It's been a long, long while since we have seen some juicy Elliotte Friedman comments on a 32 Thoughts article. Recently, a lot of the coverage, I feel, has been more so on the podcasts where all the juicy information gets leaked out, but this time, Friedman had a thing to say on this piece from earlier, when was this, yesterday? At 10:55 p.m., so it was a late night 32 Thoughts. And if you scroll down just at the very top right here, it asks the question, would the Senators consider a reunion with Erik Karlsson? Well, let's go out there and search for Carlsson's name and just try to see what's going on here. So, scrolling down into the piece, the article talks about how the Pittsburgh Penguins are not young. They're the oldest team in the NHL, but the team of Crosby, Letang, Malkin, and Carlsson, whom Dubas repeatedly made certain to mention with the other three, is not giving up. Dubas says, when you have players like that, they prevent you from falling to the bottom because they are too good. At the same time, what they can pass on to the players who come into the organization in terms of the standards that we have here, the impact that being around Sid, Gino, Letang, and Carlsson can have on a young player, that is impossible to measure. Pittsburgh must give up their first-rounder this year or next to San Jose as a part of the Carlsson trade. Aside from that, Dubas mentioned the team is well-stocked in draft capital a couple of times, adding, I can't see us moving it to bolster the team. Now, when it comes to the changes, there are a little bit more things that are talked about. There are a few extra things that are talked about that are noteworthy. The Pittsburgh Penguins change in direction, whether or not they actually commit to going there, and how Dubas says we have to take stock of where we're at. Be realistic about the fact that one of the issues we have is we need to get younger. So, when it comes to where exactly this team can go, Elliotte Friedman writes out in thought number 2, please recognize that this is manifesting purely in my own head. But as I watch Daniel Alfredsson on the bench in Ottawa, I can't help but wonder if the Sens consider an Erik Karlsson reunion. At least brainstorm it. Yes, it's complicated, and yes, everyone would have to be on board, but no one mind melds with Erik Karlsson like Daniel Alfredsson, and since it got into my head, I can't stop thinking about the possibility of it. Possibility, eh? That is a very strong idea that Elliotte Friedman is going out there and talking about on yesterday's 32 Thoughts. Link is going to be in the description if you want to read more about the Pittsburgh Penguins as well as, all the other 31 thoughts that are included in this article, but I wanted to go over the idea of Erik Karlsson returning to the Ottawa Senators. Maybe for one last hoorah, maybe not even because they're going to win a Stanley Cup or anything, but maybe because it just fits. Erik Karlsson is now 33 years old, 6 feet, 190, right-handed guy, signed till the end of 2027, making $10 million AAV, but that cap hit is only what the Penguins are paying him. His real AAV is 11.5 because there was salary retained from the San Jose Sharks. Nevertheless, there is still a very valuable profile of a player here, a guy who literally scored 100 points last year as a member of the San Jose Sharks. This team just did not play any defense. They gave the puck to Carlsson whenever they could in the power play, and he scored 25 goals and 76 assists as a result. Now this year, he's got 39 points in 53 games played, on pace for about 61 points on the year, which is good. It's certainly not bad to see a defenseman go out there and get 60 points, but for $10 million AAV, for the amount of time he has signed on, for a bounce-back year after 100 points last season, you could very well say that 60 points is in the realm of disappointing, quote-unquote. So, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, if you wanted to say that there could be some sort of inkling to want to move on from Carlsson, maybe try to retain some salary of his and send him off to some other team, maybe, if the Ottawa Senators bite, do you see this as an idea that works? Now, I will say, when it comes to the Ottawa perspective about this, it would be nice to have Carlsson and Alfredsson together. It would be nice having Carlsson just back on the Sens in general, take back the captaincy, reclaim what is his. But when it comes to the perspective of Sens fans, this is one of the top posts made on the RSens sub. Carlsson, that's a hard no, am I right? Elliotte Friedman said this, that he can't stop thinking about the possibility. I think Ottawa needs additional veteran leadership, but this is not it. We would have to swap Chabot for him or something similar to make it work. And the top comment goes out there and says, on his current contract, no. If Pittsburgh buys him out and we can get him at a decent rate, then absolutely. Or if they retain salary, and then there's a perspective arguing against that. I doubt Pittsburgh will eat salary as long as Crosby, Malkin, Letang is still there. I have a feeling they're going to try to keep trying to compete and push off a rebuild until one or two of those guys retire. I imagine at the very least Crosby and Letang are going to retire as Penguins. Pens are going to go to route of the Capitals, delay the rebuild until your generational superstar retires in your jersey. And that is exactly what we're seeing with the Washington folks, because Alex Ovechkin is pretty much the only reason that team has not entered rebuild mode yet, and you're starting to see that based off of what Capitals fans are saying. Hey, we don't care if we win or lose any games, we just want to see Ovechkin get that Gretzky record, so anytime he scores a goal, that's our win. Number 2, assuming a hypothetical scenario where the Penguins do retain salary, what's the cost on a 50% retention? 3, just some reflection here, but Greer has made some arguably questionable moves in San Jose, but gosh darn did he ever perform miracles in unloading Erik Karlsson's massive cap hit while only having to retain $1.5 million and got a bunch of assets back. They got Pittsburgh's first rounder, which if the season ended today, lottery results notwithstanding, that would be the 9th overall pick. They got Granlund, who was having a career revitalization on an awful Sharks team and who could easily get flipped for some good future assets now. They got Jan Ruda, who has helped prop up an awful blue line and will be worth a pick either this deadline or next, and they got Mike Hoffman, who still plays hockey, or so I've been told. They got a lot of luck with Pittsburgh sputtering this year, so that pick has jumped a ton of value over when it was supposed to be, but darn good job by Greer. And this is a good reflection as to what exactly the San Jose Sharks were able to do. It's almost illuminating the miracle that was the first Erik Karlsson trade, or the second one, excuse me, because the first one was actually, sending him to San Jose in the first place. But nowadays, with Erik Karlsson being a part of this team, Elliotte Friedman does make a really good point too on the 32 Thoughts piece that Erik Karlsson, Dubas is very, very much saying, is in that same boat of Crosby, Malkin, Letang. Like, you're not going to force that onto the fans. You're not going to get everybody to 100% believe it, because obviously we know Crosby, Malkin, Letang have been a part of this team for years. They made the finals 4 times. They've won 3 cups. Erik Karlsson's just not in that boat. But when it comes to the perspective of him being on this team today, yeah, sure, he's very much a part of that older veteran core of top-tier players of yesteryear. So I'd say that if there was one that was probably going to go, 1 or 2, it's probably Karlsson and Malkin. I do agree with that notion that it's probably going to be Sid and Letang retiring as Penguins, but the other guys, who really knows at that point? But if there is any salary retention or some sort of a buyout, who really knows where this is going to go? Because if you trade for Erik Karlsson, 50% salary retention, what is the trade price on that? How much do you have to send over? What prospects, what picks do you send? And do the Penguins try to remain competitive in that state? You'd probably have to wait for one of these guys to retire before you even think about unloading the rest of them, right? So for Kyle Dubas, this certainly is more of his philosophy of trying to go all in all the time. This isn't really new. We saw him do this in Toronto. You remember the we can and we will, right? That's exactly the same thing here. Spending all the money you can to get all the top tier assets right now without really caring much for what the future has in store. You could debate the Toronto Maple Leafs are kind of screwed over in that way, but either way, this entire Erik Karlsson situation brought up by Elliotte Friedman I thought was super interesting, so I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of a Karlsson reunion in Ottawa, and what do you think is the most likely way to get that done? Do you make a trade with the Penguins with salary retained? Do you make a trade just without salary retained? Do you eat up that $10 million AAV salary until the end of 2027? Or do you wait for the Penguins to buy this guy out? If you're a Pens fan, what are your thoughts on the way Karlsson has performed this season? What are your thoughts on his 60-point pace? It's good, for sure, but is it what you expected? And for Ottawa Senators fans, what do you think Karlsson could do if he's back on the Ottawa gosh darn Senators, baby, playing with Jake Sanderson or something? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.